The unlimited class side-by-side arms race has officially begun, Zach. 2 years ago, Polaris released the RZR Pro R, the biggest, the baddest side-by-side you could buy at the time. And Can-Am didn't fire back immediately, and we all kind of thought, what's happening here? Yesterday, they fired back. Zach, what did they do?
They fired back in a big way. We're talking more power. We're talking a trick transmission. We're talking more wheel travel, more ground clearance, a better interior. We are talking an all-new Maverick from the ground up that only shares one thing with the old guy. That's the seats.
I'm Aaron, that's Zach, and this is everything you need to know about the 2024 Can-Am Maverick R. So to get to know the Maverick R, we need to know the basics of what it is. Zach.
Yeah.
What is it?
Like I said, it's an all-new machine, and that starts with the engine. Can-Am says it's a 999cc Rotax turbocharged triple. That sounds pretty familiar because it's the exact same layout as in our own Can-Am Maverick X3 XRS Turbo RR.
Did they just moon boost it?
They did not. You know, that would have been the easy thing to do, right? We sort of expected Can-Am to just take that Rotax, shove a load of boost at it, and let it eat. You know, we threw a Dynojet at our rig, it was turning over 200 horsepower. We thought, man, the reach to 221 just to poke Polaris in the eye was not that far.
Nope.
But Can-Am did not do that. This new engine is all new from Rotax. They say this rig has been in development for a total of 8 years.
8 years?
That's what they said.
Tell me a little bit about this all-new engine. What changed?
All sorts of things, right? You've got plasma line cylinders, you've got tension rods to hold the thing together. We're used to like head bolts. This thing uses external rods threaded at both ends to sandwich everything together so it doesn't blow apart when you are scooting along.
Now, it's important to note that they haven't told us bore and stroke, torque figures, or how much boost it makes, but if you're going to the trouble of bolting it together after you already bolted it together, you can imagine it's gonna be a ton.
It's gonna be a ton. 240 horsepower. That's 15 more than the Pro R. It's a dry sump motor. Can-Am says they have tested that rig up to 45 degrees on an incline. Engine oil is just fine. It has piston squirters. It has all sorts of trick stuff to keep the thing cool, including an external oil cooler with 2 fans.
All right, but how are they getting the power to the ground? Is it a traditional CVT like everything else?
No, man. Yeah, so we saw the patent drawings a little bit before this thing got unveiled. It's a 7-speed dual clutch transmission. It is the only 7-speed dual clutch currently for sale in a side-by-side anywhere. If you're familiar with the Honda Talon, you know what a dual clutch transmission is, right? 2 shafts, gears on each side,
right.
One loads up the next gear, bang, you've got power just as fast as you can click through it.
How fast does it shift?
They wouldn't tell us. Very fast is what they said.
Okay, so more or less instantaneous torque.
More or less instantaneous torque. You do have high and low for all 7 of those gears. It's not a 14 speed technically, but you can go from first low to 7th low, then jump up to first high, go all the way up to 7 high.
As if that wasn't enough, they also did something radical with the suspension. If you look at it, it looks kind of a little snaky, a little maybe lobstery with the claws that hang over. They're calling that the tall knuckle suspension. Now, what does tall knuckle mean and what does it do?
The tall knuckle suspension makes sure that you can have as much travel as possible while maintaining the lowest center of gravity. It also makes sure that all of the forces, the load forces, lateral, up, down, forward, back, all of those forces get transferred directly to the frame, not twisting around the suspension. I mean, if you look at that knuckle, it is a giant hunk of aluminum.
Yep.
Super strong, made to take an absolute beating, which is good because this thing leaves the factory with 32-inch tires wrapped around 16-inch beadlocks. That is a heavy, heavy combination.
Yep, and it means that you can put 35-inch tires on it. Also, it means the thing is 77 inches wide. She's a big girl.
She's a big girl. And they made it 77 inches wide because at full compression, the suspension will actually widen up to 3 inches. There are a lot of race bodies that regulate the total width of a machine at full compression. That number is typically 80 inches. There are some legislative bodies that also regulate that too in terms of like OHV places you can ride, that sort of thing. So they kept it at 77 inches. You squish it down, it gets wider. That sounds super wide, especially when you think that our X3 is
72.
But I mean, compare that to like what, a Jeep Rubicon?
Yep, it's 3 inches wider than a Jeep Rubicon.
Yeah, a stock Rubicon. We're not talking wide tires, bumpers, all the rest of their sliders, and the rest of that stuff. You know, it's a big girl. It's not that big girl. That said, Can-Am has made it hyper clear. This is not a woods machine.
No, this is for desert racing.
It is for getting out and going as fast as you are comfortable going in the wide open desert.
They haven't said how fast.
They have not said how fast. They did say faster than the old X3.
Yes, so those are the high points of the spec sheet, but let's drill down a little bit and maybe we should compare this thing to the Pro R. What do you think?
Yeah, that's what everybody wants to know.
All right, so why don't you go through the Maverick R spec sheet, I'll go through the Polaris RZR Pro R spec sheet, and we'll see how the two stack up.
We should start with price. The 2024 Maverick R starts at $35,499. How does that line up against the Pro R?
Well, it's less. The 2023 Polaris RZR Pro R, according to our spec sheet, starts at $37,499.
Dude, $2,000. That's a lot.
And these things have been on the market for a minute, and let's just say I challenge you to find one that actually trades at $37,499.
Yeah, absolutely. I can remember when they first dropped, dealers were asking over $50,000 for a base Pro R, a base 2-seat Pro R.
Yeah.
And you know, those numbers have softened up a little bit, but not a lot.
Yeah, I mean, and it is also fair to say when the Maverick R hits dealers, you can expect that, you know, launch editions are going to be a little bit more expensive. Markup's going to come into it. By the spec sheet, the 2024 Maverick R is underneath the 2023 Polaris RZR Pro R. What's next? Engines?
Yeah,
Engines.
let's talk about engines. And this is a crucial thing, right? So Polaris went a very different way from all other side-by-sides. Can-Am stuck with something that we're more familiar with, right? So a sub 1 liter, 999cc, turbocharged triple. You're not going to run into any of the regulatory problems that you would run into with a 2 liter in terms of where you can ride the thing, in terms of how you insure it, how the EPA treats it, any of that fun stuff. It is just a regular side-by-side, tried and true.
The RZR Pro R, when you run it in a racing series, it has to be in an unlimited class. Almost like you need special regulations to run it. You're not going to see a Pro R run against a Maverick X3, and that's based on the engine size. The thing about the Maverick R is that it now fits in all the turbo classes that limit you to 1 liter. So not only does the Can-Am Maverick R have more horsepower than the Pro R and can run in the unlimited class with the Pro R, it also can slot in those lower classes where everything tops out at about 180 horsepower. The Pro R runs a 1997cc or 2 liter 4-cylinder that comes right out of the slingshot. It's a stout motor. There's a lot of room to put a turbo on it or whatever you want to do, so you can make more horsepower out of a Pro R. But again, you run into where you can drive it, you run into how you can insure it. Rules are a little bit easier to navigate with that 999cc mark.
Let's talk transmission.
My Pro R has a Polaris's PVT, continuously variable automatic. That is a traditional rubber belt driven CVT like you see in every other side-by-side. What's the Maverick R got going on?
It's got a DCT 7-speed dual clutch transmission. We talked about it a little bit earlier. You know, we're used to seeing a dual clutch in the Honda Talon. That was big news when the Talon came out with the dual clutch transmission from the Honda Africa Twin motorcycle. This promises to be something else entirely, specifically because it was designed, it was manufactured only for the Maverick R. This isn't another gearbox that was plucked out of something else and dropped into a side-by-side. This is its own gearbox.
Okay, so is it a Rotax gearbox?
It is Rotax. Rotax says that they designed the thing, started from the ground up, built it specifically for the Maverick R. That engine, that transmission combination, on my side, on the Maverick R side, we're talking 240 horsepower.
Yeah, on the Pro R side, out of the box, you've heard this number a million times, it is 225 horsepower. We should point out, that's plenty. We've both driven a Pro R, and they don't hang around.
No, it's interesting. If 2 years ago you had come to me and said, hey, there's gonna be a 225 horsepower RZR, I would have called you absolutely insane. Now we have a 225 horsepower RZR and a 240 horsepower Maverick.
Right, and you know, we were asking 2 years ago when the Pro R came out, where are you gonna use 225 horsepower?
Anywhere you want.
Right, yeah, and 240 is going to be just that little bit more insane.
So, on my side of things, the dual clutch transmission gives you a bunch of different advantages. It's got 3 drive modes. You've got normal mode, which shifts at like 3,500 RPM. You've got Sport mode that ratchets that all the way up to 8,500 RPM. And then there's Sport Plus, which turns on an anti-lag system. They will literally shut down one cylinder,
okay,
just turn it off, so it's just pumping air constantly. It's unclear whether they leave the valves open to make sure that, you know, air's going where it should be down the exhaust. That air keeps the turbo spun up. They retard the engine timing so that when you pop on the throttle, everything jumps back up to normal. That third cylinder pops off. The turbo's already spooled up. You have zero lag, and you are off and ripping.
That was the next thing I was going to bring up. The Pro R is naturally aspirated, so I was going to ask how that's going to work, and
we got the turb skis, bud.
Weirdly, Can-Am was thinking about that.
It's an all-new turbo. It's not anything that we've seen on any of the old Mavericks.
How big is it? 54 millimeter?
It's 54 millimeter.
That is huge.
It's a honker.
All right, on the suspension side of things, again, we covered it a little bit in the high points at the beginning of the video. On the Pro R side of things, when this thing came out, everyone was shocked at how beefy the front and rear suspension is. And for the first time in a side-by-side, the coilover actually goes through the upper A-arm and connects to the lower A-arm, which shouldn't be revolutionary, but it's something that desert racers raved about when it came out. It's just that much stronger than anything that came before it. But I think the tall knuckle kicks that up just another couple notches.
Like previous Mavericks, the Maverick R uses Fox suspension. This time it's live valve suspension. It uses Fox Podium 2.5 shocks up front, Fox Podium 3.0s in the back. The new live valve system samples the terrain and can adjust the shocks up to 200 times per second.
That is ridiculous.
That is ripping along. Can-Am also says that these new Podium shocks have more compression adjustment than any other side-by-side ever made. They say 6 times the previous champ.
That is huge. Let's talk about travel real quick. The 2023 Razor Pro R has up to 27 inches of travel in the front and up to 29 out back. How's the Can-Am doing?
That eclipses the Can-Am. We only have 25 up front and 26 in the rear.
Only.
Yeah, you know, you're talking 2 feet of suspension travel. That is a lot.
Right, and also the design of the new knuckle keeps everything sort of moving a little bit more smoothly, keeps the center of gravity low where you want it. So what you lose on paper on the spec sheet, you don't have bragging rights at the bar, but something tells me that the performance isn't going to suffer all that much.
Yeah, like, you know, what's 2 inches among friends?
Right. Ask that question all the time. Before we get to the next thing on the spreadsheet, friends, remember to like this video, comment on it, and subscribe. We have new content every Sunday, and if you don't subscribe, you won't get notified. So go down there and get subscribed.
Both of these machines have triple piston calipers up front, dual piston calipers in the rear, which is a big step up for braking, and you're gonna need that given the speed you're gonna be carrying.
Right, neither company skimped here. Neither company one up the other. We can call them more than adequate and move right along. All right, so let's move from that to wheels and tires. The Pro R has 15 by 7 inch 5-lug wheels, front and rear, and a set of Maxxis Rampage Fury 8-ply 32-inch tires. Tell me about the Maverick R.
The Maverick R has 16-inch beadlock wheels from the factory. These are 6-lug units. From what we can tell from the presentation, the Maverick R uses lug bolts, not lug studs. That's an interesting choice for a desert machine where you're gonna be changing wheels pretty often.
Right. Yeah, they're not the most intuitive thing to use, but we should note that it shares a bolt pattern with the Toyota Tacoma, so there should be a wide range of wheels that fit this thing.
All right, these 32 by 10-inch ITP Tenacity tires. Can-Am says these are high-speed rated tires. It's the first high-speed rated tire they have put on any machine they have ever built, which means the top speed on this thing is gonna be up there. How
Right.
up there? They haven't told us yet.
All right, that leads us to the elephant in the room. 77 inches wide, big wheelbase, lots of horsepower. Just like the Pro R, the Maverick R is gonna be pretty big. The Pro R in 2-seat, guys, its total length is 136.5 inches. That's almost 12 feet. That's big. What do we got on the Can-Am front?
Maverick R is longer, 140 inches.
140 inches? So we're talking like proper car size.
Proper car size, yeah. If you've got an 18-foot trailer, you're probably not sticking 2 of these on there.
No more yard trailer and half-ton truck for you if you buy one of these.
It is total 78.1 inches wide. How about the Pro R?
74. We're coming in a little narrower than that. We thought 74 inches was massive when it came out. Can-Am's gonna have a bigger footprint. Remember when we were shocked that the Pro R was visibly bigger than a Jeep TJ?
I do, yeah.
Yeah, I think we're fixing to be shocked again.
Again. All right, how about height? I'm looking at 71.5 inches on my side.
That's 72.8 for a 2-seat Razor Pro R, so we're a little bit bigger, and 76.5 inches if you go for the 4-seater, which Can-Am has not released specs on their Maverick R 4-seater, have they?
Yeah, I mean, they haven't said anything about a 4-seater, but you know it's coming.
Right.
Can-Ams have always been a little bit lower. They've you know, they like that low slung look. They like that low roof. The Pro R does look tall, just sitting there. It kind of looks like a pumped up June bug.
Right.
Now, what about wheelbase? I'm looking at 108 inches for the the 2-seat.
104 and a half over here, so it's a little bit more compact.
The interesting thing about the Maverick R, it's got a pretty decent bed capacity. You're talking about 200 pounds, and part of that is Can-Am integrated the link system in the back. You've got all those different tie downs for all the different accessories that Can-Am's been making for all their rigs for a long time. What about the Pro R?
The Pro R's bed capacity is 300 pounds, so it's a little bit more. It also contains Polaris's proprietary lock and ride system, so any of Polaris's accessories will fit right in.
Yeah.
It's parity. Yeah, right. I got 12 gallons of fuel capacity. What you got?
13.2.
Ooh, all right.
What do you have for ground clearance?
16 inches.
17.
Ooh. All right.
How about dry weight? What are you looking at for dry weight?
Says here it ranges from 2,144 pounds, which I guess is for a 2-door, to 2,480 for the 4-seater. What do you got?
I mean, that's pretty close. I mean, we're talking about 2,250 pounds dry weight. So they're pretty neck and neck there.
Yeah, and they're both, we should note, that's big for a side-by-side.
Yeah,
they're both
huge.
big. You know, utility rigs routinely weigh more than that, but you don't see sports side-by-sides going that heavy.
Yeah, I mean, you think our X3, our Turbo RR is what, 1,700 pounds?
Yeah, about 1,700.
Yeah, so that's a pretty big step up.
Last but not least, the boring part. I got a 6-month warranty. How about you?
Same.
Mine's available now. When's yours going to be available?
We don't know yet. Can-Am has not said when we can expect to see the Maverick R at dealers, but it is a 2024 model, so shouldn't be that long.
Yeah, dune season's coming up, so I would expect you can get one around Christmas time, if not before.
Yeah.
That's the spec sheet, which leaves only one thing.
Who are these for?
So who is yours for?
Very similar buyer to the Pro R, which is somebody who has access to wide open desert, likes getting out in the areas around Arizona, Nevada, Baja, Mexico, and just going flat out. Or an amateur racer. Now, to build a standard RZR or a standard Maverick into a machine that could compete with one of these, you're gonna pay way more money than what these things can do out of the box. And we've heard very encouraging things from racers who have taken Pro Rs, bone stock, tweaked a couple things, and just gone straight racing.
Right, and they love to quote that they use Polaris's in-house electronic suspension on the RZR Pro R, and I have talked to Casey Curry, who said he just runs that in his desert racing rig. There is no reason to assume that the Can-Am will be any different. Now, I gotta say, who these aren't for, they're both as wide and as long as an aircraft carrier. So out here in East Tennessee, unfortunately, we'll happily drive them out here, but really they're not gonna feel at home. 240 horsepower is hard to use in the woods. You know, you're pretty quickly gonna hit a tree. So they're not really geared to East Coasters unless you have access to a closed circuit or have cut some big wide trails in your woods. And that's just kind of the reality of the size and power that these things have. On that note, we have to say, if this is going to be your first sports side-by-side, maybe look elsewhere unless you're downgrading from a trophy truck. And I mean that. If you've driven sand rails your whole life and you want to see what this whole side-by-side thing is about, by all means, go buy a Maverick R, go buy a Pro R. If you've driven mules your whole life and you're like, what's this sports side-by-side thing about? They make rigs for that. Can-Am makes plenty of rigs for that. This might not be your beast.
And it's also worth noting that this is not a replacement for the regular Maverick X3.
No.
This is an all-new model. So you go all the way from the Maverick through the Maverick X3 to the Maverick R.
Right, and Can-Am has even revamped the Maverick X3 lineup, but rest assured, if you're not sure you want a Maverick R, there are so many options in the Can-Am lineup that will absolutely scratch that itch and maybe fit the terrain, your local terrain, a little bit better. Thank you for watching. That's been everything you need to know about the 2024 Can-Am Maverick R. Don't forget, you can catch us on UTVDriver.com 5 days a week. We got news, reviews, nonsense, and then when you're done doing that, head over to our social media. We're on Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok 7 days a week. We'll see you there.
Look like this.
It's
gonna look like this.
It goes like this.
There it is.